If you're still relying on Facebook and Google ads to scale your brand, you're missing out on the biggest paid traffic land grab of 2025, native ads.
Those generally are called native ads because they're basically native to the site.
Meet Val Shah, one of the sharpest media buyers in the game.
Yeah, so I've been in the industry off and on since 2008. It's fascinating to see how you can actually make money online anywhere in the world.
He's scaled offers to 6 figures a day in spend across platforms like Taboola, Outbrain, Revcontent, and now AppLovin, the in-app ad network that's quietly been taking over the e-commerce space in the past few months.
And I think AppLovin wants to protect their users, so they are getting more strict.
In today's episode, Val breaks down how to scale your ads on these platforms.
You see media buyers scale to $100,000 to $250,000 a day in ad spend. It's a great way to reach an audience that has not been saturated.
The exact testing process he uses to hit profitability.
If you're testing on native, if your ROI is negative 50% or better, then your offer has a chance.
And why most brands fail on native before they even begin.
We tell people about native is it's not instant profit or break even day one. They get scared off because they can't put into the heads that you actually will lose money the first 1 to 2 weeks.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying the videos, why not consider subscribing? We drop bi-weekly content that will help you improve your business right here on the channel. Hey, Val, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. I really appreciate you taking the time.
No problem at all. I am actually honored to be, on your podcast, and hopefully that, my viewpoints on the world of both native and AppLovin can, help a lot of, your eCom audience out there to figure out that there's a world beyond, Meta and Google and TikTok.
For sure. And I know, you've been kind of in the affiliate game for a long time, and this might be an alien space for a lot of people. So can you just kind of run through your background?
Yeah, so I've been in the industry off and on since 2008. Been doing media buying kind of, as a hobby purely. I've worked in the technology world full time in ad tech, but I've always had a kind of like side hustle in terms of media buying because it it's fascinating to see how you can actually make money online anywhere in the world. And I think if you talk to a lot of media buyers, all of them will, or most of them will say at least, they were looking online on Google, back in the day of how to make money online. Then they run into a blog or something like that, and that's how their journey gets started. Mine is kind of the same. Back in 2008, I had just graduated from college, and I think I was just searching for just some random stuff on bodybuilding and gym stuff, and I ran across this Google ad on AdWords, something about Oprah Winfrey losing 40 pounds in a week. And I was like, well, what in the world is this? So as I click on it, it goes to a blog, which obviously used a lot of, fake testimonials and all that stuff. And I was reading it. I was like, this is crazy. Cause like the ad copy was way out there, but it was just very compelling. You had these before and after shots. And then I read the ad copy. I went to the offer page, and it said something about free shipping, pay like $2 or something like that. And it was like, this, I was just reading it. I was like, this is it's super interesting. And I went into the actual URL link above, and one of the parameters said affiliate ID. I was like, okay, well, what does that mean? So I opened a separate window. I type in the word affiliate ID. And then the first thing that popped up in the search results was this form called Wikidfire. Wikidfire is still around. It's a very, very old school affiliate form. They are older than there's this other form called Stack That Money that came in later down the line. Wikidfire is still around. I tell people if you want to learn about affiliate marketing, go on there. Don't read about the stuff today. It's a lot of trolling, unfortunately. But if you go in the search history, go back to searching posts between around 2008 in 2011, in that 3-year period, you still see a lot of the same principles that were talked about then, today. So I started going down that rabbit hole. Later on, a lot of the big affiliate bloggers, came to the space like Charles No, Malin Darris, Tuan, Jason Akatef. Started reading about those guys. They're still, some of them are still around today, still running to them at the conferences. They're doing, much bigger things, but they all were affiliates. And they were talking about, their ups and downs in terms of media buying. Some days were up thousands, tens of thousands of dollars in profit. Other days they were, down because a server went down, an offer link went down. So once I started reading, I was very hooked. And eventually I went to, conferences like Affiliate Summit West and East. And, this most recent one, Affiliate Summit West, I was actually invited for the first time to speak on stage and about a world beyond Facebook, Google, TikTok, and talked about native and AppLovin, and that was really cool. Really, very nerve wracking though.
I bet. You talk there a lot about kind of the learning and the knowledge. Back in 2008, how were you kind of applying that, and yeah, what were you kind of getting up to in the space?
For me, it was about I didn't have much money back then, so I did make an account in AdWords, and I ran a few dollars in traffic, and I made 1 or 2 sales, and I always tell people in the affiliate space, you will always remember your first sale you actually made in terms of making money online. You're like, your first thought is like, okay, I made a sale. Holy crap. Then the second thought is, wait, is this actually real? And the third thought is the money actually going to come in? Like, is this actually a real thing? And every affiliate media buyer goes through those three stages. And so what I did was, after I ran traffic, I got a job in ad tech, and it was at a company selling this piece of software called ad servers. And back in the day, when you want to buy traffic, you could do it through like a self-serve ad network called like AdWords. Facebook wasn't around. There was ad networks as well, but other media buyers were using this piece of technology called ad servers, where you could basically take this piece of code, put it on publishers' websites, and then they would, run your ads. You can optimize your ads. And what I saw when working with clients there was you had big media buyers. They were spending, 4 and 5, even 6 figures a day buying ads on publishers' websites. Like, there was an advertiser, I remember they did a homepage takeover on AOL.com. It's still around, much smaller now, but it has an older audience. They did a homepage takeover for the weekend, and they were spending around $200,000 a day over the weekend. They were running pure affiliate offers. So it's like, okay, I gotta get in this space. I gotta figure out, what the heck they're doing, and all that stuff. So I did that for a few years, worked at other tech companies, and then my last full-time gig before I started the agency was I was recruited by a performance ad agency company. They were already doing Google and Facebook. They need somebody to come in to do native. I had already done some native media buying on the side. I had posted about my experiences on LinkedIn. They had found my post. I came in. I basically got them accounts at Outbrain, Taboola, and we were running lead gen. I believe it was ACA Medicare during the whole Medicare open enrollment period. Took an offer from $0 in ad spend to 4 to 5 figures a day, which was amazing. Took that experience and then started the native agency. And today we are officially ad agency partners with both Taboola and Outbrain, but we work with all the majors: Revcontent, MGID, Baidu. There's a whole bunch out
Okay.
there.
I
Yeah.
want to talk about the native agency in a second,
Yeah.
but just
Sure.
for reference, before we get into that, if some members of the audience might not know some of these terms, could you just explain what is a publisher and the type of content they were posting?
Oh, sure. Like, in terms of what a native ad is, and on a publisher website. So if you go to your favorite website, let's say Yahoo, Fox News today, and you're reading your favorite news story, you'll scroll to the bottom and you'll see like additional articles, additional recommendations, widgets at the bottom. You'll see things like, 8 ways seniors can save in 2025, or, 5 celebrities you thought were dead are now alive. Those generally are called native ads because they're basically native to the site. Um, both Taboola, Outbrain, Revcontent, MGID, they all have technologies now where the widgets can mimic kind of like the font and the layout of the website. So, like, if you go like Fox News, they'll use a certain font, for the news articles. Outbrain can basically mimic that. So basically, it will look like an article on Fox News. So it's not like a banner ad where it kind of sticks out.
It blends in, right?
Correct, it blends in.
Okay. And then are these sites, or you've mentioned some of these sites. What are the kind of traffic numbers that they're getting?
In terms of traffic numbers today, Yahoo did their 30-year deal with Taboola. Yahoo's still one of the biggest websites in the world, globally. I'm just talking about here in the US. You have Yahoo, AOL, Fox News, Business Insider. I mean, all the biggest major websites in the world all use, a native ad platform. Now, when you go worldwide, every major country, their top news sites all use, one or more native ad platforms nowadays. Now, where you are right now, who are the major news sites?
So in the golf, I don't actually know. I think it's just golf news.
Golf news. Okay, I would probably guess they use one or more native, ad platforms to help monetize the traffic and to help advertisers, reach a new audience.
So for reference, and I think this is what I'm kind of getting at, is these ad platforms are kind of doing the heavy lifting. They're going out, building relationships, getting people onto their platforms, and they're giving you as a publisher access to some of the highest traffic sites on the net, right?
Yes, exactly. As an advertiser, native audience generally leans older, about 35 and up, and because historically older audiences like to read news articles, so it fits in with that audience in terms of products that solve a mass market problem.
Okay. No, that makes sense. I know, obviously a large portion of our audience is ecom focused. You touched
Yes.
on kind of lead gen there. Is native and these kind of platforms, are they more suited to kind of lead gen ads, or does it work for ecom as well?
Native, well, basically, it's a great fit for any offer or advertiser that solves a mass market problem. So, unlike Facebook, where you can do demographic targeting, on native, there's not that option available. So, things like auto insurance, health insurance on lead gen sign work really well. In the US, on ecom, mass market products like health offers, like things that solve pain relief, work really well. Sorry, I'm just trying to think of historical examples that worked really well. You may have seen ecom offers for like drones that work really well. If you look at Q4, historically, what you'll see media buyers running are ecom listicles. It'll be things like 27 gadgets that you can get your loved one this Christmas or this holiday season. And those explode on all native ad platforms. In terms of scaling and traffic, you see, I think now with Yahoo being in Taboola, you see media buyers scale to 100 to $250,000 a day in ad spend at the peak in Q4. So the traffic numbers are there. And in terms of, in the e-com space, it's a great way to reach an audience that has not been saturated on Google, Facebook, TikTok.
I want to, yeah, now kind of talk about your experience and what you're doing now at the native. So I guess firstly, What skills from your kind of affiliate days did you carry over, and what still gives you that kind of edge today in the business?
The relationships, that's the biggest piece. Across all the native ad platforms, the principles are generally all the same. You're taking your ad, your lander, you're putting it out there in front of hundreds or even thousands of publisher ad placements, and you're just blocking publishers that don't, that are not converting. You're optimizing the advertorial to increase, click-through rate. But the one thing that cannot be duplicated is your relationships with both your affiliate managers or your advertisers or your ad network reps. You don't have to be the biggest media buyer, in the space to get the best deals, the best relationships. It could be as simple as going to affiliate conference and shaking someone's hand or, taking them out to a drink. Every big all the biggest media buying campaigns that I've seen, they've all started at $50, $100 a day. Like you start small, then you scale. But the relationships are the ones are is the one thing that you can't duplicate. And I always tell people, treat your reps and your partners like human beings. Don't be a jerk. I think I saw a piece of advice on the net one day. It was like, it doesn't cost extra to be nice in this world.
It's funny how simple that is, but everyone ignores it, right?
Absolutely.
In terms of the ad platforms, then, so what kind of native platforms do you currently run traffic or focus on?
Historically, the most experience that we have is with Taboola, just because that's where I started. However, if any of the clients come to us and say, "Hey, we want to run on, MGID or Revcontent because maybe their offer is more of a fit," then we'll start there. But we can start on any native ad network. I think it just depends on the offer. At the end of the day, like Taboola is the biggest. However, they are the most strict in terms of what can go on the network. So generally, lead gen you can run anywhere. However, where this comes into play is if you run something like Nutra, you can't really, use aggressive images on Taboola. However, Outbrain you can, Ref Content you can, MGID you can. So it will be, ad platform specific.
Okay. And just to kind of clarify that point, the platform you choose is dependent on the offer, is it, or is it just kind of dependent on how aggressive you want to go with your marketing?
It depends on the offer, because at the end of the day, when you send your offer off to their compliance team, they will go through the entire funnel, the ad, the lander, to the actual offer. Even if you have a clean lander, but then your VSL says like lose 72 pounds in 2 days, your ad is not going to get approved.
Okay. And are there any other kind of key differences that you'd say between the major platforms?
The key differences I would say are I'll talk about like MGID and Rev content. Those are generally smaller. However, I think those are better for beginners per se because you have less placements. So there's less things to optimize for, which means that you'll probably spend a lot less money in the beginning to test. The majors, I'm talking about in the US here, like Outbrain, Taboola, generally you for every ad network, you'll need a rep. However, for Outbrain Taboola, they do suggest, in the US having about 15 to 25K in, testing budget to test an offer because, you have so many placements across their platform. However, with something like Ref Content or MGID, you can probably get away with 5 grand or less, which I think that's definitely doable. And especially if you go outside the US, you can start with less. And, EMEA as a geo is a hidden gold mine if you can do the translations. AU, New Zealand, Canada, UK, those are great too.
In terms of kind of advice for beginners, then, so you're kind of saying there, start with the smaller platforms because of ad budget and placement. Is that correct? And if so, are there any kind of other tips you'd give?
Don't do self service. You can do self service, but the problem is that if you run an ad campaign self service, what's going to happen is they're going to give you a run in network traffic, which means that they're going to give you everything that they have, which it will include things like push notification, content arbitrage, which is really cheap traffic, but generally it won't convert. on direct response offers. So you'll need a rep to block those at the account level.
And then in the ecom space, obviously a lot of people kind of get started with Meta and Google. How do native channels compare to platforms like that? And I guess here looking at kind of performance, scale, and brand safety.
Sure. So in terms of, native versus Facebook and Google, I always tell people, before you start native, validate your offer on Facebook first. Just because native is a cold audience, they've probably never heard of your product. So once you get your offer validated on Facebook, and in terms of having that 35 and up, buy your product or convert on your offer, then native is a great way to kind of get access to a huge pool of a new audience where you know it's not saturated like it is on Facebook. And then same thing with Google as well. I always tell people, in terms of, if you're an ecom founder, generally I think the best way to go is start Facebook, get it get it validated there, Google as well. Then you can start, you know, scaling on or testing on native, and then you can do AppLovin, then you can do TikTok. So it'll be almost like a five-legged chair.
And would you say kind of cap out those initial platforms first and then start to look at native, or do it whilst you're scaling?
I would say once you can get about $1,000 a day on Facebook ad spend profitably, then yeah, go to native. You don't have to wait till you have to, you're spending like 20, 30 grand a day on Facebook.
Okay. And I want to talk now about kind of the full funnel. So obviously, I'm assuming this
Sure.
is kind of similar to, let's say Meta, where
Yeah.
you're testing different. You've got different levers you can pull essentially, right? The angles, advertorials, all of that stuff. What would you say is the key to success here?
Key to success is several things. So on native, generally, if you're one of the first, five people to run something, that will give you the highest chance of success. I guess I'm just talking from a affiliate point of view, but it should apply to ecom as well. Okay, for ecom, I'll just use the drone as an example. If you were one of the first five people to run like a drone offer, or you were an advertiser selling drones, that give you the most, highest chance of success. One of the biggest mistakes that we see people doing is they see a hot offer, let's say on ClickBank. They see the top offer, highest gravity. They think, oh man, I'm going to make money and all that. The problem is that offer has been beaten to death by like 20 other media buyers, and you come in with the same offer, the same ads, same angle. You're not going to make money on native. So native is about being, right out the gate.
Okay.
Yeah,
Question on that though. So let's
yeah,
let's assume the product's been out there for a while. How much of success in terms of new people coming in is due to optimizing the funnel? So testing different angles, let's say a different advertorial or something like that, or is it just this has been saturated? Everyone's seen this product. You can't
sure.
succeed.
Absolutely. So first things first, don't rip and run the ad. You can't. You're not going to get banned or anything like that. The problem is if you do that, all the native ad platforms, they have AI and algorithms now to detect that you're using the same headline, the same ad, and the same advertorial. So what will happen is you will be placed on a worse placement on the publisher, or even the publisher will block your ad from running. So your performance is not going to be good at all. And also, what you can do is, if you have an offer that can take worldwide traffic, let's say the USCC, like a bunch of people running like your same product on ecom, right? If you can do worldwide shipping, go to the UK, go to Canada, a lot less competition, and click prices are probably half or less than half of the US. And the purchasing power is roughly the same. So it'll give you a much higher chance of success.
Okay, I'm glad you brought up the kind of different geographies because this is
Yes.
what I wanted to touch on next. Just kind of off the bat, what geographies perform or are performing the best right now that you're
Yeah.
seeing?
The biggest market is the US. However, it's the most competitive. So I tell folks, if you can start outside the US, we are hearing from, people we talk to in the industry. Canada's fantastic. UK, Australia, New Zealand, those are great. If you do English, I think the real money is made if you can do translations. So go to France and Germany. Native is really strong in both of those geos. Uh, Latin America as well. However, every geo will be different. I would just tell people, use a VPN to log in from your geo that you want to run. Go to the biggest news site that they have. Start scrolling through the articles, and you'll start seeing like what kind of ads are being run, what kind of products. That will give you a big clue. Also, you can always ask your network reps if you have access to them. They have all the data in terms of what's running and what's hot in certain geos.
Is it as simple as just kind of ripping, translating, and deploying in other countries, or do you have to make adjustments and optimizations based on kind of culture and market research and stuff like that?
Um, so AI generally is good enough to do the rough translations. However, before you deploy anything, get a native ad speaker from whatever geo you want to run and have them kind of do a walkthrough of your ad and advertorial, because if you run something that's from ChatGPT or Claude or one of these AI platforms, generally they won't get the grammar or the idioms correct. And when somebody reads the ad in their country, they're going to automatically know it's AI. But the native ad speaker can kind of correct for grammar and kind of tone and formality, that sort of thing.
Okay. So in terms of the kind of slight kind of repositioning or packaging points, the rest of the funnel can stay the same?
Absolutely, yeah. Just have a native ad speaker, look over it. You can go to Fiverr. Plenty of folks out there. You can just hire them. They can do you know read through your advertorial, your ads, and making suggestions, corrections to it.
Okay, so I think, look, final question on this kind of geography point then is, let's assume you haven't kind of gone internationally and you've started in the US. To achieve kind of scale and increase the profitability, would you then recommend, once kind of scaling up in the US, that businesses go international and look at some of these other markets?
Yes, absolutely. Once you scale in the US, the good news is your ad funnel has been validated in the most competitive market. So it'll be a heck of a lot easier to go abroad and start scaling different geos. And yeah, that's the advice we tell folks on in terms of native. You'll go to different countries, different geos, and it's a great way to, earn additional profits.
The next question I have is kind of a personal one. So I speak to a lot of brand owners, and some of them have tested native. They've spent maybe 5 or 10 grand. They've
Yeah.
lost that money. And I guess, what would you say to them? Like, is there a process that you would go through to test a new product? Is there certain criteria that you check for before testing? And yeah, any just kind of general advice to people looking to launch from Facebook and Meta across to native?
Absolutely. So, in terms of for ecom folks that want to come and test on native, generally you will need to run with a pre-sale slash advertorial in the flow. Historically, a lot of these ecom companies, they'll run straight to offer page because Facebook's algorithm is so good in terms of finding the folks that will buy your product. However, with native, it's a cold audience, so you need to pre-sell them. So they will need to run, to an advertorial. The good news is, in today, both Claude and ChatGPT can help massively in terms of producing advertorials in terms of on a draft level. However, you'll have to go through it yourself, make any corrections, but they generally can, whip up a lot of great advertorials quickly. And then and what's great about the native ad space is you can see what advertorials are doing well, the formats and that sort of thing. And generally, it will depend on the kind of product you're running. If it's an ecom gadget, generally it will be a longer form advertorial, like 1,000, 1,500 words that has pictures and, testimonials, social proof. For health and Nutra, generally they will run it to a short 100 to 300 word pre-sale. It'll talk about, watch this video, this is what you're going to learn, kind of give that curiosity angle. The call to action will be click the play button. The play button will go to the VSL, and then you watch the VSL, and then, you go to the offer page.
Okay. I want to come back to VSLs in a second. Just kind of continuing with that testing piece. What would you say to someone that's kind of followed that process or structure, but they haven't seen success? Should they go in and test different angles and different advertorials, or what should they do next?
Absolutely. So what I we tell people about native is it's not instant profit or break even day one like it is on Meta. If you're testing on native, generally it'll take about 1 to 2 weeks to gather data. And if your ROI is negative 50% or better without optimizations, then your offer has a chance. It actually could be a good fit to scale. And a lot of media buyers, when we tell them that, they get scared off because they are so used to instant profits, instant break even, that they can't put into their heads that you actually will lose money the first 1 to 2 weeks.
Okay. And then the optimizations that you're talking about to get that 50% back is different angles and different advertorials, or is there any other kind of levers you'd pull?
Yeah, and then testing ads to improve CTR, which means that you'll get, lower click prices. Also testing advertorials to improve the click-through rates on those.
Okay. Makes sense. Can we talk now about VSLs? So how kind of prevalent are those in kind of affiliate or recon funnels in the native space?
In the affiliate space, VSLs are huge, especially in health and Nutra. Historically, the big players there in terms of on the affiliate space would be ClickBank, MaxWeb, Digistore24, Buy Goods. Those are the big four. Those are all VSLs. You're watching, 30 to 45 minutes on your computer about a certain problem. Typically it'll be something about diabetes, weight loss, fungus, hair loss, those kind of things. In terms of ecom, generally it's not going to be VSLs. It's going to be, advertorials. Kind of looks like a news article. Although if you do have a VSL that you want to test, it could generally work on native. It could give you an edge because people like to sit down and, watch a 30 to 45 minute, infomercial on your product. Generally it will work if your, cost like to the consumer is like over $100, because the higher the price that the consumer has to pay, the more educated they have to be. That's the reason why, like, health and Nutra, generally they all do VSLs, because the prices on these pills or powders, they're generally over $100.
In terms of funnel structure, then for these kind of VSL funnels, it will be, I'm assuming, ad pre-sales page, VSL, and then checkout page, or what would it look like?
Yes, correct. The pre-sales would generally be very short. It'll be less than 500 words.
And then is the VSL on that page, or is it on a separate page?
It's on a separate page.
And then the final question on this before we kind of move on is, in terms of people that might not be as familiar with VSLs as you are there any kind of places you would point them to for kind of research, or any killer VSLs that you'd kind of recommend they check out?
In terms of VSLs, I will say in the US, go on foxnews.com, go to whatever article you want to read for the day, scroll all the way down. You'll see native ads that will reference a health issue. You click on it, more than likely it's going to be a pre-sell to a VSL. And if you do want to research what makes a good VSL, if you can do it through ad spy tools, which I can talk about in a second. There's this company called Golden Hipple in the US. They are one of the biggest players in terms of health offers. One of the offers that's run for many, 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 many years is called Dr. Gundry. If you've been in the space long enough, you've probably seen his ad. It'll be like, if you drink this olive oil thing, something bad might happen, something like that. but their copywriters are so good in the space in terms of, finding the audience that has that exact problem, make them engaged. So they are really, 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 I mean, big in the space. But again, yeah, if anyone ever has any questions about that, certainly I can kind of walk them through what a VSL looks like.
And then final question, I promise. Ad spy
Yep.
tools that you mentioned, where would you point people after those?
There are several in the space. Adplexity, Anstrix, Adbeat. Anstrix is good for beginners or people that don't necessarily want to spend a lot of money on spy tools. Adplexity is mostly what all the media buyers use nowadays, the affiliates. The big players use Adbeat. Adbeat is the most expensive. However, it used to be able to give you impressions and ad spend data. I'm not sure if they do that anymore, but what was cool about it is you can see actually the ads scaling over time in terms of, performance, which was really huge because you can see like, oh, if they're scaling, it must mean that their offer is working.
Okay, interesting. And then I know there's been some big news recently with kind of Yahoo and Taboola. Can you just explain what happened there?
So Taboola and Yahoo did a 30-year deal, which is unheard of for the industry. Yahoo basically became a part owner of Taboola. And in exchange for that, Taboola got exclusive access to monetize all of Yahoo's traffic via native ads, which, was a huge move in the space. So, and they got access to AOL and all the, placements inside Yahoo and AOL. And it is absolutely been a game changer for, a lot of the advertisers that were looking for scale because historically Yahoo was had their own ad platform called Gemini, which was good. The problem was it was another ad platform that people had to learn, but now you don't have to do that anymore.
Okay, so I want to kind of move on now and talk about AppLovin. For those of the listeners who have maybe been living under a rock for the past 6 months to a year,
Yeah.
will you just explain what AppLovin is and how it's different to kind of other native platforms?
So AppLovin's a little bit different from native. AppLovin is a ad network. However, it just deals with in-app mobile traffic. So the example I like to give is if you're playing games on your iPhone or Android device, I'll just take Candy Crush for example. Basically, if you're playing Candy Crush and you want to skip a level or get more rewards, you can elect to watch a 30-second video ad. They call it rewarded video because if you watch the video, you get a reward. You watch that, then you're taken to a something called they call it an end card, which is basically an HTML landing page. It could be the offer page, it could be an advertorial, and then that is what AppLovin is on a global level. It's all in-app traffic. There's no web, there's no desktop. It's literally on your phones, which is very interesting because the engagement time on mobile apps like games, I believe it meets or exceeds that on Facebook, which is absolutely amazing because people are playing games for hours a day. Like if you go to the airport or you're on a plane, you'll see people playing games on their phones for like the whole time.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I see here we have a lot of kind of DoorDash type drivers, and they'll be kind of driving along on the moped, playing the game as they go. It's pretty insane. On that point, I feel like I've been playing games for kind of 10 years, let's say, on my phone. Why is that bluffing just kind of blown up now, and why wasn't it a thing, or why did it not feel like a thing? A thing, 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Well, AppLove in terms of why wasn't a thing, I think it was because I don't think the algorithms were there yet. I can give you a little history of, AppLovin and what it was. Historically, it was a platform for in-app developers to find, user acquisition, right? They would run their ads to get new gamers or new users. However, I believe a year ago, 2 years ago, they bought a piece of technology from Twitter, and it was called MoPub. MoPub was the largest ad server in the mobile in-app space. So every major game developer used MoPub as their ad server, which meant that they would run all like their monetization through there. So MoPub had access to all this first party data since they were the ad server of record. When AppLovin bought MoPub and integrated them into their algorithm, AppLovin could now see the first party data of their most engaged users in terms of them watching the ads, how many people clicked on it, the kinds of users, that sort of thing. So once they had that piece, then I felt like they had the confidence to actually start going to ecom advertisers and start inviting them in. And it's still a beta program now in terms of getting into AppLovin. I don't know if you've heard on your end or you know anybody personally that that's gone to the AppLovin ecom beta program, but I can at least talk about that if that helps.
Yeah, for sure. In a second, because I had a
Yeah,
couple of other kind of questions
sure.
on more. So my first point was on the end card. Is this, something that people need to click on when they're in the ad, or does this just display when people have finished watching?
When they're finished, it will display, and then they can tap on it to go to the web page that'll load. In terms of that end card, that is a piece that we tell people to test extensively. Different end cards have wildly different performance metrics, so it's a very easy thing to test. You can just swap out pages to see what works the best.
Okay, so it's just kind of a static page that displays at the end of a short video ad.
Exactly, yeah.
Got it. Okay, and then another kind of question that I had in terms of AppLovin, does this give advertisers access to all phone app traffic, or are there kind of competing platforms that they also should be looking at?
No, basically they get access to whatever in-app traffic that AppLovin has in their network, and it is quite large because every major gaming developer they all use AppLovin. So I like to say they're the Google of the in-app world.
Something else I want to talk about is ad credit. So I don't know if this is still going on, but I think AppLovin were enticing brands pretty aggressively, right, with credit. Is that still the case?
Yes. So historically, when they opened up to get invited into the beta program, you could get a $10,000 ad credit. When I last checked, it was still active because it's still beta invite only. You can apply to the program if you there's two requirement actually there's three requirements to get in. So one is you need to be doing around $20,000 a day in ad spend for the past 7 days, targeting the US on Meta. Number two, your GMV value must be $10 million or more. And then number three, your offer cannot be scammy at all. I think originally when AppLovin was inviting, advertisers, some advertisers kind of snuck in, and unfortunately they were running kind of scammy ecom products, and a lot of users complained. So they are cracking down on that. So those are the three requirements. Now, in terms on the ad spend requirement, if you are running close to that, they may grant an exception, or if you're spending, say, 15,000 a day on Meta, but like 5 grand a day on like Google Display Network or something like that, you may be able still to get in. However, if you have any questions, we're more than happy to, answer any of those. The ecom advertiser can be located anywhere globally. There is no USA, corporate uh incorporation requirement or anything like that. They just need to be targeting US traffic on Meta.
Okay. And in terms of geos that you can run on AppLovin, what can they focus on?
US right now, there are plans. I do not have timeframes in mind to expand that globally. We did meet the AppLovin team at their headquarters in Palo Alto. They are slow rolling this ecom program. I think they're keeping a lot of things close to the chest just because they know that this is their one shot to actually compete with Meta, so they don't want to ruin it.
No, that makes sense. Can you talk to what kind of products you've seen have success so far, and if there's any kind of boxes that you think people should be checking off before looking at advertising on AppLovin?
Things that have worked are, I would argue, are things that work well, on native. Plus, I think there's more additional products, which interesting enough, like things like fashion, makeup, we've seen work well. Yeah, ecom products generally that appeals to a mass market, I think, do really well because in terms of AppLovin's audience, it leans generally on like native because you see a lot of people they're stuck in not stuck in traffic, but maybe they're stuck at your local DMV or somewhere, a doctor's appointment, and they're just like bored and they're just playing games all day. So generally, the same products that work on Nave will work on AppLovin.
Okay. And would you say here there's more of a leaning towards impulse purchases because you're kind of interrupting, someone that's busy playing a game?
Absolutely, yeah. It's more, yeah, it's an impulse purchase. They're bored, yeah. So things like if you have a product that generally is doing well on Meta, yeah, AppLovin should work just fine.
Okay. And then in terms of kind of funnel structure, I know we've talked about, the ad, the end card. Is there a certain structure that should happen or funnel that should go after that end card, or is it fine to take, from end card straight to a product page?
So we've seen advertisers test on both, like they'll run, ad to advertorial to offer. Others will run from ad straight to the offer page to test those out. Now we have heard from advertisers that are running AppLovin that AppLovin is starting to crack advertorials a little bit. I don't have like official word from AppLovin. I think what's starting to happen is folks who got into the program they and I think I would argue this for like affiliates who maybe got in the beginning. Generally, they will run very, very aggressive stuff. And I think AppLovin wants to protect their users. So they are getting more strict. It doesn't mean like you can't run it. You can try to run it, but it's not like you'll get banned or anything like that because if you get into AppLovin's beta program, all the onboarding is manual at this point. You do work with AppLovin rep hand in hand. They'll help you get the ads online, install the pixel. So if you have any questions about that, yeah, just contact your AppLovin rep. They'll be able to give you clarification.
Okay. So you'd say kind of any funnel structure that would work, but just be careful of the content.
Exactly. Yeah, and they'll tell you like, hey, this is too aggressive, or you can't run this. Try this. So policies are, they are changing, and I think once they go self-service, which again we don't have a time frame on. I don't think they want to announce that yet. I think those policies are going to be tightened up. It's like every ad network platform. If you get in the beginning, it's kind of like the Wild West. You can run anything, but as they open up to more and more advertisers, they will tighten up ad policy.
For sure. Talking of ads, I'm assuming they've got to be, have a pretty insane hook to stop people playing a very addictive game and kind of watch and take action. Are there certain types of ads that you see that perform really well?
Yeah, so generally, if you have winning UGC video ads on Facebook, you can take those over into AppLovin. That's actually one of their biggest pitches in talking to advertisers is that hey, you don't have to edit anything, you don't have to reformat, just take your winning video ads and bring it over to AppLovin.
Makes sense. I think another question that I had on this is, are there brands that you see that are doing it very well? And are there kind of tools that people can use to kind of look at their creative and funnel?
Yeah, so right now there's really no like spy tools that I know of that can spy on AppLovin ads. You just have to download, your favorite game and start playing. I will say, going, on Twitter and social media, Ridge Wallet, I think it's one of the biggest players out there. Their CEO is one of the biggest AppLovin kind of fans and promoters out there, and their product is doing really well. So if you go on Twitter and search for that, you'll see a lot of posts about that. But I would say, yeah, download your favorite game, start playing, and then you'll start seeing video ads and ecom ads, and you kind of see what's running.
For sure. Okay. Final app loving question then is, what advice would you have for people that are looking to get started, both in that kind of testing phase and then optimizing and kind of scaling on the platform?
Sure, sure. Assuming you can get into the ecom beta program, start testing multiple end cards because that's going to give you the biggest leverage. And then once you start scaling, Obviously, if you have other, you see video ads you want to test, rotate those in because once you start scaling, then yeah, ad burnout becomes real.
I want to kind of start to round things off and bring this together now. So,
Sure.
would you say that the rise in AppLovin and kind of other native channels is part of a broader shift towards omni-channel marketing?
Absolutely. And the reason why is because everyone is fighting for the same real estate on Facebook. It is becoming more saturated. We will see this in Q4. That's when CPM, CPCs go through the roof. So I would tell folks now to start thinking about testing on other ad platforms. Also, with native and AppLovin, like you're not going to wake up tomorrow and see your ad account banned or your ad account go down or something happens or your business manager gets hacked. That generally doesn't happen on native or AppLovin. The only reason why you would get your ad account banned is because if you were cloaking or doing black cat or just try to sneak in a lander that was non-compliant after your original lander got approved. The reps want to work with you at those platforms. If you're making money, you're scaling. The native ad networks make money too, and AppLovin as well. So everybody wins.
Nice. Okay. And just to double tap on what I think you're saying is brands should be kind of testing, proving concept on Facebook and maybe Google first, and then looking to diversify beyond that.
Absolutely, yeah. We do not recommend you if you haven't validated your offer on Facebook and Google. Don't start native yet or AppLovin.
And then in terms of the kind of modern media buying stack, what are the platforms that you see in that?
In terms of the modern media stack, Facebook is still king. Then it's a tie with Google, like YouTube or GDN or even search. Then it'll be native, AppLovin, and TikTok. Those five, I think all the major e-com advertisers out there are going to use, that full stack.
Val, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you, and there's been a lot of knowledge dropped. For businesses that are in the ecom space and potentially looking for some help with some of this stuff, where can
Mhm.
they find you? And are there certain kind of size requirements or sectors that they need to be in to work here?
Sure. So I am on LinkedIn. If you search for Val Shah, I post a lot there. Also on Twitter, I post daily about native and AppLovin. If there's a space in the end or somewhere where I can send you a link, I'd be more than happy to send you links to those. Also, there is this forum called the Native Hub. It is a place for native media buyers to kind of network and talk about certain concepts. That is run by this ad agency called Xevio, XEVIO. They are the biggest native ad agency globally. I was actually fortunate enough to be on stage at Philly Summit West with their founder, Nadeem, who I respect very highly in the space. And yeah, he's the king in terms of native and seeing what's out there and seeing the latest strategy. So I could drop a link to all those at some point.
I appreciate that. Val, thank you again for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Scaling an ecom brand is hard. That's why we're on a mission to share as much info as we can to help make it easy. From weekly interviews with the biggest names in the space to case studies, brand breakdowns, and tips and tricks, and much, much more. Subscribe so you don't miss out.